Okay, well, thank you everyone for joining us today. We're going to go ahead and get started since it's a minute after 11 o'clock. Good morning and welcome everyone back to Diversion Strategies, Strategic Solutions, Thursdays at 11 chats. Today is a part 2 of our series that is focused on traditional organics recycling solutions in agriculture. So our previous webinar, if you were able to participate, was more, educational based. What are agricultural solutions to organics recycling? And today we're going to focus on maintaining agriculture as a municipal recycling solution. My name is Rachel Oster. I am the host and also co-owner of Diversion Strategies, along with Erin Merrill. Today, excuse me, I'm fighting a little bit of a cold. So today we are going to be utilizing the Q&A function for all of your questions, and Erin is behind the scenes managing that. Since there is some legalese involved in this webinar today, we will be relying on Jason Molinelli, who is an attorney that is well-versed in solid waste contract and franchise law. And he'll be joining us today behind the scenes as well to answer any of your questions that may need to be answered with some legal background. So without further ado, we will get started. Okay, so today's chat, just as an overview, we're going to talk a little bit about agricultural outlets again, in case that you weren't able to participate in our first webinar part of this series. We're going to describe the pathways again and re-summarize those. Then we're going to do a bit of a description on the current market dynamics for organic recycling and agriculture. And then because this is a solutions-based webinar, we're going to be giving you some solutions, including programs and practices that you can utilize within the local government to support utilizing agriculture for SB 1383 compliance. Okay, so just as a review, and we were really fortunate to have California Department of Food and Agriculture with us for our last webinar to talk through these pathways. And this is an infographic that we worked closely with CDFA on. And you might have to move my video up here to see everything. So. But this is the agricultural byproducts pathways. And this represents 12.5 million metric tons of capacity for processing organic material in the state. That's a huge percentage of what SB 1383 is requiring of the state. And in many cases, these are not counted toward overall organics diversion numbers within jurisdictions in reporting. However, SB 1383 does allow animal feed as an available diversion technology, as we pointed out in our last webinar series. So this does represent real available capacity for organics recycling in the state, and it is growing. So there is also available capacity for additional organics that may be coming out of the disposal stream because of SB 1383. So to go over what these pathways are, we have consumer direct, which includes wet food processing waste, cull, fruits and vegetables, your grocery items from the retailers or processors, weigh, recovered retail food, expired pet food, only to non-ruminant animals, and direct cull, fruits, veg, and nuts from harvest. So the glean, if you will, material, field rejects. Also, processor that has a collection facility. So this kind of material includes recovered retail byproducts, restaurant food waste, wet food processing waste, food processing waste, including expired foods and salvaged pet food. Also, a large component of the of organics recycling within the agricultural industry is through feed mill and for further manufacturing into to finished feed. So byproducts from agriculture that include dried fruit processing byproducts. So I think almond hulls is a really good example of this process. Whey, traditional oil meals, canola, soybean, rice distillers, grains, and nut meals and hulls, almond, walnut, and pistachio. These are examples of agricultural byproducts that can be recycled into animal feed and are throughout the state. And then another agricultural pathway is rendering, which can include all raw meat products that require an elimination step, fats, oils, and greases, and commercial food waste. So let's talk a little bit, now that we know the agricultural byproducts pathways, let's talk a little bit about the current market dynamics and limitations that we have that exist that may not allow or may not support the reporting, the current reporting of this material for that to include an organics diversion. I think everyone who is in a local jurisdiction is familiar with the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, GGRF fund, that can fund organics diversion processing projects. These are grants that are up to $3 million to build out infrastructure that can sometimes be $50 to $100 million. But these are funds that have been available over the last several years for private companies, local governments, to apply for, to get these grant funds to build projects. And these are typically earmarked for activities such as composting and anaerobic digestion and co-digestion at wastewater treatment plants. But we haven't seen many that have been allocated or rewarded for agricultural pathways. And that this is one limiting factor in the marketplace right now to get these projects and programs integrated into solid waste programs. And then also solid waste contracts, we'll be diving into this a little bit more on a further slide, but solid waste contracts, franchises, and ordinances can unknowingly restrict outlets for recyclables processing. This can, be through exclusivity or flow control that may unknowingly be limiting the available outlets for organic material that's generated within a jurisdiction. So we'll be touching on that a little bit as well. Oh, I forgot to mention as well that kind of like the grant challenge, the challenge that not a lot of grants are directed toward this certain facet of the industry. Also, if with 1383, there are procurement requirements, as you're all well aware, and they can be quite significant, but procurement can only be met through the purchasing of certain recyclable organic commodities, including mulch and compost and RNG. And so, if procurement were tied to all available organics diversion technologies, we think that this would also be a pathway toward more investment in agricultural pathways for organics recycling. Okay, so now that we have re-summarized what the opportunities are, and we've discussed some of the challenges that exist in the marketplace today, how can we ensure, what are some strategies and solutions for ensuring that current solid waste programs have access to agricultural capacity? And, one comes to mind as well, utilizing the rendering pathway of ensuring that uh, that we can look toward other streams as well, like residential streams, to increase our amount of organics diversion, like residential inedible kitchen grease, for example, is one we discussed on the last webinar. How can we make sure programs like that are readily available and supported through our contracts and ordinances and franchise agreements? We're going to discuss that here in the next slide. So this is why we wanted to bring on some attorney support today, because a lot of what allows this practice currently and can support it in the future is the California Integrated Waste Management Act of 1989, AB 939, which gave this local jurisdictions the ability to develop solid waste programs that were that they needed to themselves to meet the statewide goals. And the statute gives local governments that control, and they can do so through the following: franchise agreements, contracts, licenses, permits. They can do it with or without competitive building. And local governments can do it through exclusive or non-exclusive contracts. So that is something that AB 939 gave way back when. And now, obviously we're building on this rule with SB 1383. So enter now a new organic waste mandate, recycling mandate. And of course, with it comes definitions. And organic waste means food waste, green waste, landscape and pruning waste, non-hazardous wood waste, and food soiled paper waste that is mixed with food waste. And we all know that recycled materials have value and are not waste, quote unquote, until they are discarded. And there's case law that supports that as well. And we know that sources of this organic waste can come from industrial, commercial, or residential. So now we kind of have our understanding of how organic waste is defined, how we view it as now a recyclable material, and then also the sources that it can come from. And so layered on top of that is the AB 3036, which excludes byproducts, certain byproducts from exclusivity. So a city may not grant exclusivity to a party for the collection and disposal of food byproduct materials if the materials are from agricultural and industrial sources, are source separated by the generator of the byproducts, are used for animal feed, and are not discarded. So going back to that, it is recyclable, which is organic waste, and not include animal processing byproducts. So this is a statute currently in law, and here are what we did here is to point out some industrial sources, so that everyone within that is within a local jurisdiction can start to figure out, okay, do I have some of these sources within my jurisdiction, and can they be a source that might find outlets less expensive, or even beneficial revenue generating outlets for them outside of the current solid waste flow. So an entity required to be registered pursuant to section 110460 of the Health and Safety Code, cottage food operations. So those are like catering businesses. An entity exempted from the registration pursuant to section 110480 of the Health and Safety Code. So that's certain manufacturing operations, food processing, food packaging operations. And then, of course, the beer and wine manufacturers and distillers are also considered industrial sources. So here's an example of how a city is utilizing language within their franchise agreement to ensure the support of these activities, ongoing activities that are currently happening. That they have. This is just straight out of the franchise agreement. The following person shall be authorized to collect or transport solid waste, including commercial solid waste, within the unincorporated county without a county franchise. A recycler of organic material that is destined for use as either animal feed or for final disposition on land in a manner that is specifically authorized by the State Water Resources Control Board or a regional water quality control board, provided such final disposition does not adversely affect public health and safety or the environment. So, so basically, if an agricultural byproduct is applied, that it has to be done at an agronomic rate that is supported by agriculture and is beneficial for the environment. So this is just one example. There are, other ways we can think about this because, and let me go back here. Because a local government has the right to govern solid waste through use of a permit, it can, in addition to exclusionary language within a contract or franchise, we can also, create permit systems as well to govern the management, the collection, management, and processing of this material. And with that, I am going to take a breath and stop. And I see we have questions coming in. So we can go ahead and move on to our question and answer part of the webinar. Erin?
Yeah, no question. Oh, there we go. One just popped in. Yeah, Crystal's having a hard time hearing you. If anyone else is having system issues, let us know in the chat. I know I have not had any issues hearing on my side. For the rest of you who are able to hear us, if you have any questions for Rachel or even Jason, feel free to ask us.
Yes, please feel free to use the question in the Q&A function, or we can also look in the chat as well.
Will a slide deck be distributed later? Yes, we will have a deck available, once we have the recording edited and all of that.
And to get some maybe some things going, I can start with the questions. Jason, I'm going to lob this one to you. Interested to hear, Jason, how you think waste, the case law. I know I mentioned it before, but with waste management of the desert and how that might play into some of this, and what your thoughts are on that. If you wouldn't mind joining us on that one.
Thank you, Rachel, if you can hear me. Yeah, so the waste management case from the 90s, I believe, long-standing case, that's the one that made the legal determination that recyclable material have value. and thus, are not subject to the Integrated Waste Management Acts for a local municipality's ability to control the exclusivity of those materials until they are discarded. Once they're discarded by the generator of recyclable materials, they no longer have value, right? That's kind of what the case found. And so with SB 1383 being relatively new legislation that has yet to have been fleshed out or challenged at the in the courts. So we're just left with the statutory language, which is fantastic. So the plain meaning applies without any case precedent. And so that leaves open to the interpretation that these organic materials that we're speaking of do have value. I think that is not up for debate, that there is value to these materials. So then that is taking that rationale one step further under the waste management case, that until they are discarded, they're not subject to the exclusive control or flow control of a municipality to the extent that they are considered recyclable materials. Whether or not there's a delineation between that at some point in the future in the courts is yet to be seen. But as it stands right now, again, it's a pretty fair argument or position to make that based on the value of these materials, they should be considered recyclable and then are not waste until that point in which they are discarded, which, put in a cart at the curb or put into a bin out on the corner, whatever the method is for discarding those. And so that's just kind of basically the thought on that as far as, are these recyclable materials? Can they be regulated to the extent of exclusivity outside of those, the materials that you mentioned under AB 3036, which are very specific. And there's so much more in the world of organics. So that's kind of, I guess, a long answer to a very short, simple question.
No, it's helpful, and it's not an easy answer. So I appreciate your thoughts on that, Jason. Also, I wanted to mention to the audience that yes, this PowerPoint will be available. We, as always, we post these on YouTube as well, so you can even come back and rewatch the webinar if you're interested. But the PowerPoint will be available on that as well. And what we're also doing as a follow-up to this series is that we will be creating a landing page with more information on supporting agricultural byproduct recycling and integrating it into solid waste programs. And that will be a live site probably beginning of February, and it'll be a resource that can be used by local governments, folks in the industry that could use the resource as well. And so we'll be reaching back out to this group with that information once that that site is live. So definitely look forward to that. Any other questions coming in through chat or Q&A, Erin? Or
no, we have a quiet bunch today.
Okay.
So I was just kind of thinking, as we kind of conclude this little mini two-part series, kind of any closing thoughts. I know not to call out some people in the participants list, but we do have some panel members as well from our previous webinar. If they're welcome to jump in as well if they have anything to add. But yeah, just any thoughts on this two-part series as we conclude here.
Yeah, well, as folks are thinking, I definitely think of some things. And when we originally took on better understanding these agricultural pathways for organics recycling, I think our mind was definitely opened, and especially because we've been following closely SB1383 and listening to the challenges that local governments are facing. What we keep hearing is capacity, and I think um, as as business grows in California, as you add on new generators that have not had organics recycling services in the past, to just have your mind open about the different opportunities out there that might be outside of your existing frame of reference in the solid waste industry. And this is definitely one of them. And we definitely have great resources at the California Department of Food and Agriculture, as well as just within the industry, that are wanting to work and with generators to create uh, robust diversion programs that don't cost an arm and a leg, and actually can perhaps be revenue generating for some generators of organic waste. So I did see something come in the Q&A as I was talking about my thoughts.
Yeah.
And I just, as you're reading that, Erin, yeah, the other thought is that we're at an interesting time just in the world with the pandemic and what businesses are facing. Still, the ripple effects of the pandemic and the costs associated with organics recycling. I know that many solid waste program managers are hesitant to go to city council. And what Diversion Strategies sees here is the opportunity to say, hey, yes, it's going to increase rates for many of our customer base, but we are looking for outlets that may not be so costly, and there may be some generators within your jurisdiction that can benefit from these pathways that might be revenue generating.
Great. Thanks, Rachel.
Yeah.
So question from Mike about just logistics on the webinar. This was a shorter webinar today, Mike, but we will have the recording available via YouTube once we get it edited and cleaned up a bit, as well as the PowerPoint available. And so we will send a blast out to you all when that's made available. And then Crystal asks, any comment or word for cannabis disposal and recycling? I know the state has various classifications for cannabis, which seems fortuitous timing to have Jason also on as well. So I'm going to punt this one to Jason directly. Any thoughts, Jason, on that question from Crystal?
Sure. Thank you, Erin. Fortuitous in that through my 20-year regulatory practice in environmental work, in the last 5 years, it has transitioned a little bit to include cannabis because it's so similar as far as the regulatory framework and how you work with cities and counties, municipalities for contracts, permits, and some of the pretty steep regulations. But to answer that question directly, that's a great question. At this point, I don't know the tie-in because, to your point, Crystal, there are specific requirements in I think now it's Section 4 of the California Code of Regulations, the blended cannabis regulations that apply specifically to how you must dispose of cannabis waste. And one of the allowable options is to use a local hauler. Another option is to compost it yourself. But then there are recording requirements for cannabis waste generators so that there's no diversion, right? And that's the big component of cannabis waste is in a different sense of the word diversion, so that a potentially dangerous drug is not diverted to the black market or to the streets or to children or to wherever. And so because of those stringent requirements and considerations, it'll be interesting to see how cannabis waste fits into SB 1383. I would presume, well, I shouldn't presume anything, but it may very well be that as organic waste, it can be part of the new organic waste stream, but again, maybe not, just because of the nature of cannabis waste being potentially dangerous if it were to be diverted outside of the waste stream for people to use. So more to come on that, I suppose, but that's a really interesting point and a great question. And I'm sorry I couldn't answer it a little more precise for you.
I think that's really helpful. Yes, there's quite a bit of regulation around the disposal of cannabis. I do know that of course, we have to research everything before we make rules around it. I do know that CDFA was doing some research on feeding hemp to goats. So I think that's out of their feed inspection group. So that's something that's forthcoming, that they are looking for potential agricultural pathways for hemp and production waste. So yeah, stay tuned. Maybe we'll have a webinar about that one. I think it will probably be well attended. Okay, any other questions, Erin?
Yeah, we have another one from Mike Selling on rate increases as a result of 1383 on the side of on the residential side. I think the short and the general answer is it really is going to vary jurisdiction to jurisdiction and program by program. So it's hard to kind of put a blanket answer on that. He adds, he knows it can vary significantly depending on proximity to processing facilities such as digesters, animal feed, et cetera, which is definitely a big consideration. Yeah, I think I kind of have a non-answer for Mike in that it depends. I don't know, Rachel, anything to
Yeah, I mean, I would echo that. It's all dependent on the programs that you currently have in place and what the gap is between those and what SB 1383 requires. And certainly, as Erin said, I mean, transportation we're seeing is probably one of the biggest impacts on the rates because of the capacity challenges. So, how far your point of generation, transfer station, whatever it is from your processor and outlet is huge. And then also what material, what equipment is available there at that processing facility, and how expensive it is to manage your the makeup of your residential stream. So yeah. Anything else? Any other questions coming in?
That's it. Yeah, I think we're ready to wrap up if there's no other questions.
Yeah, I hope everyone can hear us okay. I hope that wasn't a problem. Definitely be making the PowerPoint available, and we can send it definitely to this list of participants. So yeah, I'll wait another minute or so to see if anything else comes in. But otherwise, thank you for joining us. This will be our last webinar for the year. So happy New Year to everyone, and I hope your holiday season is warm and cozy and satisfying for you and your loved ones. And we will be in touch after the new year with sort of a landing page for this educational information, as well as, of course, we'll be doing our Thursday at 11 chats. So look out for that information. We'll be coming at you with more solutions, and look forward to seeing everyone after the new year. So thank you for participating today, and we will I don't see any other questions coming in. So we will see you after the new year. Thank you, everyone.